Welcome to the deep dive. You know, we often talk about the brain, don't we, as this undisputed seat of consciousness, the source of our self.
Absolutely. It's the standard model.
But what happens when our best science, our most brilliant inquiries kind of hit a wall when they try to tackle those really profound questions?
Yeah, the big ones, like what is pain fundamentally? Or fear, where does intuition really come from? Even that deep inner silence.
Exactly. Things that feel almost, well, the source material mentions Natalia Bechtereva calling them the unexplainable, almost sacred core of being.
And she was a giant, a top neurophysiologist, yet even she, with all her research into these areas, found that classical neuroscience had limits. It couldn't, maybe in principle couldn't, answer some of her deepest questions.
Precisely. And that's really where we want to start this deep dive today. Because right at that boundary where those questions linger, that's where a completely different framework comes in. It's a theory called Odam Tili.
Which means language of humanity, right?
That's it. And our goal, our mission for you today is to explore how this theory offers some, frankly, surprising answers. We want to uncover maybe new ways of looking at ourself, at consciousness itself.
And even really personal things like fear, like faith.
Right. By looking maybe beyond just the brain, looking instead at the body, at sound, at rhythm as fundamental.
It's a huge shift, really, moving the focus from the brain as the sole generator to thinking about the body, our breath, sound itself as these primary sources of how we experience things, how we make meaning. It's almost like rediscovering something.
The theory called it a science that we have forgotten.
Intriguing.
So let's try and unpack some of Bechtereva's core questions, the ones that push the limits, and see what Odam Tili has to say. Her first big one was fundamental. How does the I, our sense of self, actually come from the brain?
She really wrestled with that. You know, does the brain create not just feelings, but faith, abstract thought, consciousness? The standard science view generally lands on complex neural processes, emergence.
Right, it emerges somehow from the wiring.
But Odam Tili, if we connect it here, it offers a radically different angle. It suggests the brain isn't the source of being.
Okay. Then what is it?
It's more like the translator. It doesn't just invent consciousness on its own. Instead, it encodes our experiences, our bodily sensory experiences into sounds, forms, images.
So the raw material isn't brain stuff, it's body stuff.
In a way, yes. The theory argues it's actually sound, breath, the body's own rhythms that form the primary structure of the self. Consciousness isn't just a brain byproduct.
Wow.
It's the result of the body and, well, the theory uses the word soul, having a voiced experience, like your essence is a living sound.
That completely reframes it. Sound and rhythm is the foundation of I. Okay, if that's the case, it leads directly to Bechtereva's next big puzzle. What's the word's real connection to the soul? She sensed this deep link between language and our inner self, you know, but couldn't nail it down neurobiologically. And traditional science often just brackets the soul concept as, well, unprovable.
Right, it steps around it. But this forces us to think about language itself differently. Odam Tili proposes the word is an ancient code, phonetic, spiritual.
The code.
Yeah. It argues that the basic building blocks of sound, the phonemes like a O, M, S, they don't start in the cortex.
Where then?
They arise from the mechanics of breathing, your heartbeat's rhythm, even subtle tones from your abdomen. It's deeply physical.
So the soul in this view.
The soul is seen as the source of the word, and the word is its imprint, its physical resonance in the world.
So our words aren't just thoughts encoded, they're echoes of our body's own song.
That's a good way to put it. Echoes of a deep bodily resonance.
Okay, mine's slightly blown here. Let's move to another one Bechtereva explored, which is fascinating. Why is fear sometimes felt as sacred?
That's a powerful question.
She wondered if that deep primal fear, maybe fear of the unknown, could actually be the root of religious intuition. Mainstream science, of course, usually just says fear is an evolutionary response. Threat detection in the brain.
Standard survival mechanism. But Odam Tili, again, offers a different layer. It suggests that kind of fear, that deep existential dread, isn't just a defense mechanism.
What is it then?
It calls it an ontological trauma.
Ontological trauma?
Meaning a fundamental break. A rupture in our connection with that primary language of the body we were just talking about.
Ah, the phonetic connection.
Yeah, exactly. When a person loses that intrinsic link to the world through their embodied sound and rhythm, they lose their sense of meaning. And that's when this profound, almost sacred fear emerges.
Wow.
The theory even suggests that ancient symbols, you know, biblical ones like the snake, the apple, the tree, They might not just be stories.
I don't know.
They might be some of the earliest sensory-based codes. Think about a hiss, that C sound, or the feeling of being rooted. Those bodily sensations could have been the first words imprinted way before complex language.
That's a powerful way to think about fear. Not just a warning signal, but a sign of disconnection. So if fear is this ontological trauma, this disconnect, does Odam Tili suggest how to, fix it, how to reconnect? Is it just about understanding this, or is there a practical side?
It definitely points towards re-engagement, towards remembering or perhaps relearning that original embodied language. It implies a path back.
Okay, and that ties into another area Bechtereva looked at, faith. She saw faith more as an experience, not just a brain function.
Right, whereas traditional science might look at social factors, cognitive development, maybe brain regions associated with belief.
So how does Odam Tili approach something as personal and complex as faith?
It reframes faith, interestingly, as a kind of pre-linguistic trust.
Pre-linguistic, before words.
Exactly. Take the word mama.
Universal.
Right. The theory suggests its core sounds, they don't come from learning language initially. They come directly from an infant's natural breath flow.
Like breathing out.
Yeah. Or the act of sucking, the body's own rhythm. So faith, in this very primal sense, is an innate bodily recognition. It's not a complex thought process your brain constructs later.
It's built in.
It's like a primal biocode of trust embedded in our very first physical experiences. A deep, resonant feeling of belonging, you could say, like a hum within the body.
I can sort of feel that deep intuition of connection before language complicates it.
Yeah.
So how does this theory bridge that gut feeling, that intuitive trust, with the more complex faith we might develop later? It suggests our spiritual path is maybe less about abstract ideas.
And more about recovering a foundational physical language.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, one last big one from Bechtereva. She described awakening, that sense of profound realization, as a return to oneself.
Yeah.
What does Odam Tili make of that? Traditional views might just call it a metaphor, or maybe a specific brain state.
Well, if we stick with this core idea of the voiced body,
right,
then true awakening, according to Odam Tili, isn't just a mental shift. It's a return to our phonetic body.
Our phonetic body.
Meaning rediscovering the primal score, the music of your own being, reconnecting with your bodily memory. Think about lullabies, the rhythm of prayers, nature sounds, your own breath, the unique vibration of your voice.
So the real self isn't a thought.
The theory posits the true self is an voiced body, a living, resonant expression of your physical being in the world. Awakening is restoring that deep connection between your physical reality, your voice, and the meaning you find.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. This deep dive, it's really highlighted a fundamental shift in perspective, hasn't it? Moving away from the brain as the only place the self and consciousness happen.
Definitely.
And pointing instead towards the body, our breath, sound itself, as maybe the primary sources of experience, of meaning.
And it brings up that idea that knowledge isn't just about intellectual understanding. It's most valuable when it resonates, when it's applied, when you feel it.
Right, when it's understood and applied.
Exactly. And it's important to stress Odam Tili isn't presented as, a religion, or even as skepticism. The phrasing used is a science that we have forgotten.
A forgotten science. That invites critical thinking, doesn't it? Questioning our base assumptions about where consciousness really comes from.
It absolutely does.
So, as you, our listener, reflect on all this, here's maybe a final thought to chew on. If the true self really is an voiced body, and awakening is a return to our phonetic body, what could that mean for how you connect with your own inner world?
It's a personal question.
It really is. The theory suggests Odam Tili might be, and this is a quote, the key to the 100,000-year silence within you. What sounds, what rhythms, what resonances might you discover if you start to listen inside yourself?